Find my recording button. Hello. All right, there we go. We're starting to record. All right, so welcome back, everyone, to the second part of our digital accessibility training. I'm going to start sharing my screen, which has my PowerPoint. 1 second. Get back to you. Okay. So hopefully you are seeing my PowerPoint now. So welcome back. Hopefully everybody who is here today was also, I'm just making sure I'm not missing anybody, sorry. On the participants here, I'll just come over here. Everyone who is here today, hopefully either was part of our training last week or was able to watch the recording. Again, hopefully you, if you had any questions, you were able to reach out and look at the recording again. Again, please mute when you're not speaking. Everyone did fantastic last time, so thank you. There's no need to turn your camera on if you aren't comfortable, but if you'd like to, we'd love to see your lovely faces. Please use the chat for questions, or you can unmute yourself or raise your hand in Zoom. We'll try our best to get through those. And I said we'll be trying breakout rooms, but I don't think we will for this particular training. So today our focus is on digital accessibility for PDFs, portable document formats. Again, I'm Karen. Amy is Amy.
And I'm Amy.
And we'll just skip over all that because you know us now. Before I continue going through this, I just wanted to say I put another resource in our handout folders. Oh, you know what? I'm not sharing everything, so hold on. Because you're still seeing my PowerPoint, right?
Yes, we're seeing the PowerPoint.
Okay, so now are you seeing the PDF?
Yes.
Okay, so before I continue with the PowerPoint, I want to just let you know that I did put in the Adobe PDF Accessibility Quick Reference Guide into that handouts folder. So what that is, you don't necessarily need to print it out for today. This is just a resource to kind of have in your back pocket. This is something that the Access for All group out of Oklahoma, AbleTech. Those are some of the people that have done training for us to get trained. And we've been with them for, I don't know, 2 years now, doing some trainings. And so very well put together document. We may not, again, touch on everything that this document has, and that's okay, but it's here for you if you need it. Let me go back to my PowerPoint. Okay. So just to reiterate some of the things that we went over last week about what makes an accessible document. We talked about document titles. We talked about heading styles. We talked about list structures. We talked about alternative text. We talked about column headers, color use and color contrast, and appropriate link text. The other thing we kind of touched upon are tags. And tags are the labels behind the scenes of any document or web page. And tags identify the type of content that's being displayed. Hold on 1 second, just letting somebody else in. Tags also help with navigating logically through a document, and you will really see how evident that is when we get through the PDFs. Okay, so I'd like to take 10 to 15 minutes to go over the Word remediation homework review. I would like to review it all together, but also I want to hear from you. How did it go? What questions do you have? Did you try the document that we had, or did you try a document of your own? I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. Would anyone like to volunteer and kind of talk about some of the things that you found? Or questions? Don't be shy. Did anyone get a chance to work on it?
Karen, I worked on it. This is Donna, and I worked on it and it went pretty well. The only thing is that because I'm on a Mac, I had to figure out different ways to do, to access everything. I'm still pretty new at this. And so that was a little bit of a frustration, but I moved right along on it. So thank you. It was good to have a hands-on piece. So I'm really glad you assigned it.
Yeah, and I hear you on the Mac. I have a Mac too. And Amy and I, when we were working on the assignment too, we ran into some differences between Macs and PCs. So I don't know if anyone else has a Mac and can attest to that as well. But anyone else kind of want to talk about looking? Nope, that's okay. If you weren't able to, did anyone else work on a new document maybe that they want to talk about using styles that we had done, the headers, alternative text? Were you able to use any of the things that we learned in documents that you may have created over the last week?
Hi, this is Angela. So we talked briefly about this, Karen, different meeting, but because you guys are using Word and I, as a graphic designer, I'm using InDesign. There are a few things that I've been working on, kind of translating to that program, and certain things that I started to do was better organize my photos. The alt text, instead of having something that said boy, I'd be like boy with blonde hair riding a tricycle, just to be more observant with my photos. And also going back to how I would style a page. Before, I might have 5 different boxes for 5 different things, because as an artist, I like to move things around. So for me, it's like very fast and quick to move things around, but going into more of a standardized version of how I have to do things in order for somebody to be able to use it is a change for me. And that's probably the hardest thing I've had to do is, instead of having 5 different blocks of text where I would do it creatively, I have to now kind of put them into one box and then make sure that everything is stylized. So for me, that's probably going to be the biggest challenge. And sometimes what I found that I've done is put the whole piece together the way that I normally would, and then I copy, paste all the text and put it into one big block, and then try and go back and do my style. So I'm kind of working backwards, forward to figure out the best solution for me. And I will be looking more into some InDesign training, but it's not the best. But I definitely have taken some of the things that you've gone over and translated it into what I do.
Awesome. And for those of you who don't know Donna and Angela who just spoke, they're part of our marketing team for EASTCONN. And we are fortunate that they are what I call buying in to this, which is kind of a loose term, but it's really important that your boss or your team or your marketing department, your web people, anybody that you are going to be working with these types of documents are willing to understand what's needed, right? Because you might be doing everything in your power to make something accessible, and it gets to the next step and it just stops. And we really want to make sure that that doesn't happen. Anybody else? Questions, concerns, comments from sort of what we talked about last week? Even if you didn't do the homework, I just want to hear from a few other people, if possible.
Karen, it's Jessica. I played around, I was one of the folks that came in late to the last session at 10:30, so I missed the beginning, but I did my own Word document and played around with it a little. And the only thing that kind of threw me off was doing the text with a picture, the description. It gave me, whatever the intelligent suggestion was that it came up with, and I wanted to change it. So I changed it, but then I had to take like an extra step to see that later to make sure it was still there. It didn't, when it's doing the check of the accessibility, it still shows, picture 1, and then the description isn't there in the column on the right. So I had to click again to make sure it had actually saved the text that I wanted. Does that make sense?
So you were, so when you were in Word and you tried to do an alternative text, you had them do it for you?
No, it gave me what it thought, and then I clicked on it, and it had, like, it was a picture of, I don't even remember, like a cat or something. And
Okay.
I wanted it to be more descriptive than it was. So it said just, a cat. And so I opened the box and I typed in what I wanted it to say and then X'd out. And then it just keeps saying picture 1 suggested. But when I click on that, it showed what I wanted it to read. But it didn't sort of keep that open in like a display on the side so that I knew it was there and had saved it the way I wanted to. So that was the only thing that threw me off. So I'll keep playing around with it. I may be missing something.
And sometimes you could be doing all the right things, and when you look at something, the accessibility checker is picking up something, which is why
Yeah.
it's so good that you're aware of what needs to be done. Because once you're aware and you're like, I know I did this, and the checker is still saying it's wrong,
Right.
when you at least have those basic bullet points of what I need to do, and you transfer it over to PDF, you can say, I did it. I know that it's accessible, whatever. Or you can try
Right.
again. But the fact is that you're aware that you're trying, and you're willing to continue. And that's awesome. So thank you.
And Karen and I still have things like that happen to us. We'll go through and we'll do everything, and we'll go over to PDF, and we're still running into some issues. Sometimes it's a Mac to PC issue, if Karen shares something with me, or sometimes it's just for some reason it's losing something when it's transferring over, and we're not always sure why. But like Karen said, as long as being aware and then doing what you can to fix it is really what's important.
We've also found some issues when you're going from different versions. Like I have 2019, and you might have Windows 3 or Microsoft 365, and then Amy has 2016 version. So even those little nuances can kind of change. Or if I had a document that I knew passed all accessibility and I give it to Amy who checks it, it could pop up another error. Or vice versa, because 2019 was updated or 365 is updated. So again, just knowing that you have these things to check, you're already way ahead of the game. Anyone else want to share some experiences? You can unmute, you can type in the chat if you'd like. I'm just looking at the chat now. If you weren't able to see the last session, I will resend the videos. And again, I'll send this one. And there were closed captions on the first video. So we'll do that again for this one as well. All right, so I'm going to go back to sharing my PowerPoint. Okay. Amy, remind me, am I going back to, yeah, I'm going to go back to Word, aren't I?
Right, we were going to show
Sorry, guys.
the document with all of the comments, and then we'll show what it looks like in Adobe.
Fantastic. Sometimes I just forget. Okay, so we did sort of go over this at the end of last session, but for anyone else, this is just sort of a refresher. Here are some of the things that we wanted to make sure that were done. So first, you want to make sure that you have a title. So for me, for a Mac, I have to go under summary and then title. For those who are using PCs, you can go into your file in info, and then now my cat wants to come up, and then change the title within those details there. So what we did here is, even though there's a title attribute or title option in the style, it doesn't carry over well into PDF. So I made creating accessible documents to an H1. I made demo documents in H2. There goes my cat. I kind of fooled around with the spacing using the normal style here to get rid of any extra spacing. And you'll see when we transferred it over to PDF, some things were still there, which were kind of annoying. We made the apples to bananas a list using bullet points. I changed the simple tables to a heading 2. Using this table, I went in and under the table, oh, that's because I'm in something else, but you have to go in and you have to format the table to be headings and make sure that you check off the second box, which is repeat heading rows across pages. This table here, I honestly would have just deleted and made the same table as above. And we left it as is when we transferred over to the PDF to show you what not to do. Then in the images, we talked about alternative text. We talked about inline items, make sure that they are in line with the text above. We talked about links and putting something in and making sure that it's descriptive text. Click here for more for Zoom information versus this really long URL. The other thing we talked about is to not use the auto alt text in the newer versions. Don't generate, because it could, when I did that, it said like tree at the sea something, right? But there's no ocean there. So making sure that the alternative text it's true to what you see. Okay, so Amy, I am going to stop sharing, right? And then we're going to go into your document. Or no, I'm going to go back to PowerPoint.
Yeah, go to the common mistakes.
Got it. Got it. Okay.
There's a question in the chat regarding using tight text wrap versus inline.
So when you don't use inline, you will get a warning in the accessibility checker. And that has to do with reading order, because when you transfer it over to PDF, the tags for that are not in the right order. And so when someone is using accessibility technology, assistive technology, the image could be somewhere else, or it could break right in the middle of the text. So you really need to make sure that it's in line.
And then a couple of other people who did practice with Word, and just basically about the number of issues, and there's a lot to fix, and it takes a while to really get this to master it all. It's a lot. And
Amy and I are still learning too. Like every time there's a new update to a program, or you're going from one document that's already been built and it's beautiful, but it's not accessible, we really have to think about everybody. And we want to make sure that
definitely.
It's accessible.
Yeah, I'm working on a document right now that was created by a group that I work with, and there's one section on there that I'm trying to maintain how they want the information presented, but at the same time making sure it's going to be accessible. So I have this one little area that's just giving me a heck of a time. So it takes extra time and patience, but it's in the end, it's worth it. It's important that that we do this.
Absolutely. And when you start building new documents, you already start with the basics of using headers and alt text. So you don't really have to remediate. You just have to use the tools that you know at the beginning. Okay. So we went over the homework. I'm just going to go over what a PDF is first, right, Amy? I'm going to go through these slides. Okay. So a PDF is a portable document file for long-term sayings. So we all know is it a PDF, right? Everybody kind of knows what a PDF is. They know what, you put it, you can read it online, you can read it in your Adobe. It has electronic information that is readable. It could be interactive, and interactive, not so much video media, but a link is interactive.
Or a form.
Or a form is interactive, right? And we need to make sure that it's accessible from many devices. It's easy to navigate, whether you're using technology to help you, or if you're sighted and you're reading it, it needs to be in a logical order as well. A PDF also preserves the layout. So well, we could take all that information on a PDF and we could put it on a website. Sometimes, and Angela, our graphic designer, makes these beautiful layouts of flyers and documents, and we want to preserve that. We just want to make sure that they're accessible. That it's also easy to put them online and have access to printable documents. So especially with everything going on with COVID, it's great to have these resources and not to have to reinvent the wheel and try to take that information and put it onto a website. But yet you can link it to a PDF and then you can print it out for your own records. So here are some common mistakes, and we went over the print to PDF last week. If you've done all this beautiful work in a Word document and you hit print to PDF, it will strip all the accessibility tags from the document. Sad, right? Like we don't want to do that. So it won't take them out of your Word document. It just means that it strips it when it brings it into the PDF. So your work's not gone. It's just not carried over to the PDF. The other thing is scanning a printed document to a PDF, and I see this all the time as the webmaster for a few other places, is that like handbooks or documents or things that have just been in place for so many years, no one has the document, original document to send you, so it's been scanned and uploaded. So Amy, you want to talk about OCR?
Sure. So when scanning a document to a PDF, OCR is something that people don't always think about when they do this. So if I have a hard copy of a document and I go to my my printer/scanner and I scan it and to email it. So say if I'm going to scan it and email it and send it to Karen, if I just scan it and don't go into settings and make sure I'm accessing OCR, then what will happen is it's basically it's similar to printed PDF in that it's just an image of that. It's not the actual text. So OCR, optical character recognition, what that means is that it's recognizing each and every character. So every single letter, every single item on that document is being recognized when I scan that document. One of the things nowadays, because of Adobe Professional does have some features in it that if I have scanned something without the OCR within Adobe itself, I can use tools in there to have OCR done within the program. And there are other technologies that will do the same thing. There are some tools that have OCR features that will change the whole document or just as I need it as I'm reading the document. The other issue that you got to run into is OCR is great, but what it's not going to do is it's not going to tag the document. So I'm still going to have an issue of needing to tag that document. So the big lesson in this is going back to the source is always the best option. And if you can't, there are ways to make it accessible, but you're going to have a lot more work to do that.
And so if we have time at the end, Amy will be able to show you some documents that she scanned on purpose to kind of go through them. But we're not going to get into the details on how to remediate these types of documents. That is a whole other training. But we want to make you aware. So if someone scans something to you or you're about to scan something to somebody else, you kind of have that red flag first to say, is this going to be accessible? What might happen if I don't do what I know first?
And I do have to say that this is an error that I see happen a lot. A lot of the schools that I work with, they'll go to give materials to students who need to use assistive technology, and they'll be frustrated and say, but it's a PDF, why can't they read it? And I'll have to keep revisiting the whole point about OCR, about making sure that the document is accessible, and trying to show them the difference. When they're looking at that document electronically, they're not seeing the difference, so they don't get it. So if I show them both, when it's done in an accessible way versus an inaccessible way, they understand it, but they're not always able to identify ones that they then want to give to students.
And that's tough right now, dealing with the school
Yes.
from home, of course.
It's been a big challenge.
Oh, I'm sure. The other thing is not tagging the document correctly in the source, which is why we did the training last week before we went into PDFs, is that by doing the heading and the alt text and the everything else that we did, making sure that it's tagged correctly. So when you do bring it over to PDF, there's little to none. I say little because there might still be things that you need to do, even though it passes the checker and you did everything you could in Word. And we'll show you some of those easy steps today. The other thing is using other programs like Photoshop and InDesign without checking for accessibility is a common mistake. And I know, again, I'm going to give a shout out to Angela. She is all in with this accessibility and learning as much as she can with InDesign. And it's tough because you would think that Adobe, who runs Photoshop and InDesign, would make it all come together, and it doesn't, which is frustrating when even their own programs aren't all working together to make something accessible. And the thing like Photoshop is, you know, you make these beautiful text photos and then, or posters, and then you put them online and they're not accessible. So we just want to make sure that we kind of think of all the permutations that might come into a PDF, be sent electronically or put online. And that kind of plays into the images of text only. Those are some of the common mistakes that we've seen, that we've come across. Anybody else want to chime in? Have you seen any PDF issues in your work? Leave the chat open. Go ahead and type, or, you know, just let us know. So what makes a PDF accessible? So this is just sort of the technical background of why we have the standards we do. There's no one document that lays out like this, these are the standards. They've kind of been taken from other universal design, universal accessibility standards. The WCAG 2.0 compliance, that is the web content accessibility guidelines. They're actually at like 2.2 now, but the law that was kind of put into place, January of 16, January of 18, I forgot when it was actually put into place. They go off of these guidelines. And even second step of that, when it comes to websites, again, there wasn't a law about it. It was the law that referenced these guidelines. And until there's more case law about people being sued and because their websites aren't accessible, which may have PDFs on them, we want to make sure that everything is incorporated. So, no, go ahead.
Someone gave an example of a newsletter as something that they see, and I see that too with PDFs that are newsletters and they're not accessible.
All the time. Newsletters are hard because you have so much content and you want to put it into a logical reading order that's pleasable to the eye, that's readable, that's pretty. But we need to look at it from an accessibility standpoint. And something like, I'm going to bring up Constant Contact, which not them by themselves, but stuff like MailChimp and Constant Contact. And there's other types of newsletter or e-blast types of tools. Personally, we've run into issues with them, and it's the company, right? So it's the tool itself makes it harder to make things accessible. But and I run into this with websites with the templates and the modules and some of the things that I put on there. They're not accessible at first, and so you have to do so much more work to make them accessible, but we need to do it. We just need to do it. So some of the technical standards for making a PDF accessible, that all meaningful elements are tagged. Again, if you do them in the source, you'll there's little you have to do here. If we have time, we might go through artifacts, but again, that's sort of second level thing. But I'm putting it on here just so you're aware. So when things are not meaningful, like if there's an extra enter space, right, we can tag that within PDF to make it an artifact, and that hides it from the excessive assistive technology. But it doesn't, you can't really delete it because then it comes up as an error. We want to make sure that there's a logical reading order, and that all graphics, charts, logos, etc., all of them have alternative text. We want to make sure the color contrast is the correct ratio, and that there's a title in the document. So those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items are really the key. Okay, so these are the things that we're going to go over, and I'm going to go over the accessibility checker, the reading order, tags, and screen readers. If we have time, Amy will be able to sort of go through all those. So I'm going to stop sharing, and then Amy is going to share. And the reason why Amy's sharing versus me is because I have a Mac and her stuff is easier to see. For some reason, my Mac doesn't provide the same outlining, so it would actually be easier to see here. One of the things that we ran into is that when I transfer over from Word on a Mac versus saving it from a PC, some of the tags are slightly different, but they shouldn't interfere with accessible technology. But we did find that. So where it says section as a tag, mine said document, right? So yeah, so I like the way that Amy's highlights here. So I'm gonna request control of Amy's computer because we're fancy. And so Amy, actually, before we go into this part, can you go over the accessibility tool and where to find it?
Sure, the accessibility checker?
Yeah, so the other thing is too,
Sure.
if you don't have Adobe Pro, you will not have this, which is kind of sad. I wish it was a default in the free version, but it's not. So if you don't, and also if you don't have it on your right hand side, you might have to go into tools.
So I can go on the right hand side because I have that open, but I can come up here on this tab and I can go to tools, and I just have to move this on the screen. Hold on. All right, and then I can go into it's under the protect and standardize section of the tools. So if I didn't have it in here, I could add it. I do already have it in here, so I can click open, and then it will open that accessibility. And I'm going to see it on the right hand side, and it's going to give me various options. So what I'm going to do is, let me run the full check.
Let's run the full check. Yep.
I'm going to run the full check, and it's going to check this document that should be fully accessible to see if it is actually fully accessible. So, and then it's going to give me a list of all of the issues. So right now it's saying for the document, there are 2 issues, and for tables, there's 1 issue. And Karen did mention that about that second table that was included. That's why there's an issue there with the document. The 2 issues that it's pulling up are the logical reading order and the color contrast. And those anyway need to be done manual checks.
And they will always show up.
Right.
It will always show up in your accessibility checker. If those are the only 2 issues that pop up, it's fine.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, it's a good thing. It just means that Adobe's like, hey, you know what? Just look at them anyway. I think we're good, but just try it anyway.
Yeah, because sometimes the reading order, it can be funky, even though you've done everything correctly. Sometimes if there's like a little extra, like Karen was saying, sometimes there's a little extra space or something with it near an image that can be artifact, but sometimes it can throw off a reading order. So in this case.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, so this is really the first thing that you're going to want to do. And if you don't have Pro, please advocate for it, because it's just the next step in checking accessible documents. What it's not going to do, and even though there's a headings option here, I'm going to take control for a minute. There is a headings option here. See how it says appropriate nesting? All that's checking is to make sure that it goes like heading 1. Heading,
Information conveyed in images needs to be conveyed in text as well.
whoops.
This can be done either through alt text or by using
Turn it off for a
captions.
moment.
When using
What's that?
captions,
Can you turn it off for a moment?
the image
Yeah,
set as background. If the document is made into a PDF so that the screen
I'm not-
reader isn't reading
hold on.
duplicate information.
I'm not sure why it was doing that. I didn't have
Okay.
anything on.
I
Okay.
don't see appropriate nesting. Where was it? Okay, so when I'm on the bottom here for accessibility checker, and it says headings, which is one of the options, and it says appropriate nesting passed. All that's checking for is making sure, now I can, okay,
Accessible documents.
it's still reading to me.
Yeah, it wants to read to you. I deactivated the read aloud.
Thank you.
I
Okay.
was just doing some testing earlier. That's why it's doing that.
Which is great. But then I lose my train of thought. All right, so what it's checking for with appropriate nesting is making sure it goes from heading 1 to heading 2, right? And instead of going from heading 1 to heading 3 to heading 2, because then it wouldn't be a logical nesting order. Last week I talked about nesting dolls and making sure that it all kind of fits together. So that's what it's checking for. What it's not going to check for, if there's no headings whatsoever, you are not going to get a flag that says no headings. Even if it's just paragraph text, but that is still a manual issue because then you're not creating this logical reading order and being able to use this assistive technology to skip through. All right, so that's what we do first, right? So I'm looking through the issues, making sure that everything that I did in Word carried over correctly, because we all know technology sometimes isn't our friend. And so sometimes we have to continue. So when we did see this title that says title pass, that is the reason why we went into file info and changed the title, or I went into properties on a Mac and changed the title. That would absolutely say failed if, excuse me, if there wasn't a title there. Now, this is one of those really easy issues to fix if it wasn't there. So to do that, I'm going to go to File.
Yep, and properties.
And Properties, and go into the title and type something in. And then hit OK. And once you do that.
Before you close that, Karen, so one of the things that you're going to notice in here is that the tab for that particular document, the text that is displayed is the title text rather than the file name text. So that's one of the changes that will be there. So if there isn't a title, then what it will show is the file name. And that's actually some of the other documents that I have opened here in Adobe. That's the case with those, but that's something we could discuss later if we have time for that.
Right.
Just wanted to make you aware.
Right, and that's one of those things that when we talked about last week, making sure that your file name can be that detailed version 2 or the date or something like that, but your title should really be what the document is. So I'm going to close out of that. If this had said failed to, if I right click on it, there would actually be another option here that says fix. And if I clicked fix, it would actually bring me to the same properties page that I could type in the title. But
or it can fix that connection, because sometimes the title is there and it fails, which is what I had happen with another document yesterday. And when I went in there and did that, it just established the correct link.
Yep. All right, so I'm just checking the chat. We're good. The other things that we kind of go through, page content, it says that everything tagged passed. But again, we're going to take a look at the tags in a little bit, because even though something's tagged, we want to make sure it's tagged correctly. So let me just go into this table, and then we can go into reading order and the tags. So I'm gonna go into this table, and where you can see headers failed, right? So if I actually hit the little caret I can actually click on where it says element 1, and it skips down to it, which is great. And it's this table that we had just talked about a little while ago. The reason why the one on top passed is if you see where it says TH and TD passed, what it's saying is that your table headers and your table data cells were tagged correctly. This one, where it failed, is not. I didn't do anything to this chart on purpose, so you can kind of see that fail. We really should have redone this chart or this table to be the same as the one above, and then kind of did the same row tagging the table headers so they go across the rows to the second table. If we had done that, it would have passed. Okay, we're good. Before I move on, anybody have some questions on the accessibility checker itself? I'll open up the chat if you'd rather chat there. All right, so Amy, I will stop controlling if you want to go into the reading, whether you want to go into reading order or tags. I'll leave it up to you.
Let's see, we can go to the reading order.
Okay.
So if we go to the reading order, I want to go to the top. So I'm going to go to page 1. So the reading order, what it's doing here is it's putting the text into blocks, and that's the text, that's the order it's going to read in. So for some reason on this first page, the heading 1 is its own block, and then the rest of that page became a block in and of itself. Generally, it breaks it up a little bit more, but in this case, it's going to read things in the correct order, and because it's tagged correctly, which we'll look at next, if I'm using a screen reader, I can use my keyboard shortcuts to get to navigate through this. So it still is correct. It's just a little different than what we usually see. If I go to page 2, we're going to see the order. So 1, 2, it is going in the correct order. It is telling me things that are tables, that it actually identifies it as a table. And even though that second table has errors, it's still recognizing that it is a table, which is a good thing. And then on my third page, I'm going to see where things get a little funny. So what happens is when I get to where my pictures are, for some reason, it's taking things out of order. So we're going from 1 to 4 to 5. So 4 and 5 are pictures of the pandas. It's going then from 2 to 3. So if I were to read this, it's going to start with my image text, and then it's going to bring me down to images that don't add any meaning. Then it's going to go to my link, and then it's going to go back up to each of those images. And we don't want it to do things out of order. So we can fix this. It's not difficult to fix. If I click on where the one that says links, click here for Zoom information, which right now is number 3, I can click and drag this down to the end, and then it's going to reorder that. So now I'm going 1, 3, 4, 2, and 5. So that number 2, which is that text that is after the second panda, I can do the same thing, and I can drag that down. I can drag it down if it lets me. And now I can correct that order. So now I have the logical order here of 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So it's going to read things in that correct order.
And I just want to make a comment about the pictures itself. So I know that in Word we had talked about still making things in line or in line with the text, and you still have to do that. Even though it kind of messed up this reading order here, you may not share every document as a PDF. You may actually share it as a Word document, which is why we still need to make sure that we're doing the accessible items as making pictures and images in line with the text.
Yes. Yeah. All right, and then we have our final page, which is page 4. And one of the things we're going to notice on this page is that page 4 is just the picture of the tree that's not by the ocean. Right. And what it's doing is for some reason, there's something that was picked up, and below that picture is, it's picking up as if there's other information there, and that's tagged as 1, and the picture of the tree is tagged as 2. So this is something when we go into our well, we could artifact that 1. So as Karen was talking about, there's ways to come in and artifact things so that they don't show up. And that's when we would go in and artifact that, and then it would be hidden, and it would just be the figure of the tree, and that would just be a 1. So
Absolutely.
for the most part, it looks good in terms of reading order. It just was a little bit glitchy on that 3rd page. So that wasn't too bad. Sometimes with reading order, I've had some things that I've looked at where if it's a real mess, then it's just better to go back to that source document and fix there, because sometimes there are just so many errors that it's more frustrating than anything to try to fix it in Adobe.
And the other thing with that too is that if it's really messy and you do your best and you fix it in Adobe, if there's a save and there's an update to the original document, you have to do it all over again. So we want to be cognizant that we're doing the right stuff at the source.
Exactly. Good point. Okay, so that's the reading order, a little bit of overview of that. And then we go from there, we're going to look at the tags. Anything else about reading order, Karen, that we should touch on?
No, the only thing that I do see is it's great that you actually have the file name at the top of your reading order. I don't think I have that when it transfers over from a Mac. So
you don't have this up here?
No, I think it just says something else. I'd have to bring it up. But again, like if you get a document that comes from an older version or comes from a Mac, some things might look just a little bit different.
Oh, okay. Any questions at all in the chat before we go to tags?
No, Angela just says, I am so happy to see that this happens to you too.
Thanks, Angela. Yes, it happens to us.
That's exactly what I said.
We're not immune, unfortunately.
No.
So now we're going to go to looking at the tags. And again, like Karen said before, when if we've tagged this, appropriately, then it's going to carry over from Word into Adobe. And as we can see, it definitely has, as Karen was talking about, that the top there, we have our heading 1. So, and then we go to our heading 2. Any of our heading 2s, it's just gonna do the same thing where we're gonna see all of our heading 2s. And if we get down to here further on this page, we also have a list. So it actually displays it as a list. Because we made it a list. If we didn't make it as a list, what would happen is if I were then using a screen reader to read this and I used my keyboard shortcut for list and I wanted to read through that list, it wouldn't be able to find it if I didn't tag it as a list. So, it's critical that it be there. Or for our tables, if I haven't tagged my tables as tables, if I go to search for tables, the same thing that's going to happen, and then it's going to make it difficult for me to navigate through those tables to read the information that's contained within those tables.
And to remediate lists and tables inside PDFs is awful. It's a lot of work, it's time consuming, and it can get really messy. So again, go back to your source. And if you click on that caret, you can see more.
So I can see it. So all the items in my list, I was going to say table, in my list, I can scroll through each of the items, and as I do that in the tags within the document, it's going to show me which one I'm on. So it's really good because it gives you the exactly where you are within that particular document.
And just as a side note, these tags in this tag tree that you see is the same type of language that's used on a website. So H2 for header 2, or P for paragraph, LI for list item. Those are all things in the background of web pages. So it's really all related.
Mm-hmm. So here's our table. As Karen was talking about this earlier, within that table, we have our 3 table rows. So our first table row should be headings. So once I click through that, I can see that's going to come up as TH. So those are table headers. So it's letting me know that those are my headers. And then the ones below are the table rows that fall below those headers.
And those are the data cells.
And those are the cells that belong under each of those headers. So it's all logical. It's just if it's not done correctly from the beginning and you have to go back, it really makes it more complicated. So basically doing the work up front is really what's important, really critical.
We have a little bit more to say on tags, but again, does anyone else have questions about the tag tree? What anything means, when it's carried over? Feel free to unmute. Feel free to type in the chat. I have the chat up.
And I'm gonna go down to that second table just so we can see that it's just all, there's no heading row. So that's why it's giving us that error for that particular second table.
Absolutely.
And then we'll go down to the figures. So we have our panda. And then we're gonna see, oh, we have a little
Extra space between.
little extra space that somehow snuck in, even though Karen did all that she did. Again, this just goes to show that even with everything that you do, sometimes there are little things that carry over, so that, you know, may or may not show up as a blank when this is being read. A lot of the screen readers now, there's things that they will ignore, but depending on what version somebody has, that does make a difference. And we can't assume that people always have the, you know, the latest and greatest programs.
Oh, just before you go on, so yes, Donna, to answer your question, she asked, would you mark this as an artifact? Absolutely. So,
Yep.
I mean, we still, my cat's on the computer. See, she just typed something in the chat that was just a bunch of characters. That was literally my cat. So yes, you would mark this as an artifact. And you know what we can show them.
Sure.
So by going into, you can do it in the tag tree too, because that's where it was. So if you kind of dig deep down, hit the carrots, right? So now you can see that there's no more carrots. That's the actual item, that little box there. If you right click on that.
Yeah, on the box. All right, and then change tag to artifact. So I can click that and change it to an artifact, and then I'm just gonna hit OK. And then it goes away.
So now you can see that paragraph tag doesn't have a little caret.
Yeah.
Now we can remove that paragraph tag, because delete, like if you says delete empty tags, that is you can delete that tag, or you can say delete empty tags, and that will actually delete that one because you've marked it as an artifact and now it's gone away. You can't just delete a tag without marking it something like an artifact, because they'll see that something happened and something went wrong.
That's interesting though. Was that section marker already in there?
Yes.
It was.
Yeah.
So it's putting the section marker in the middle of the page.
That's interesting.
That was it there before though? Before I deleted the tag?
Oh, I don't know. I didn't look.
I don't think it was.
Good times, guys. Good times.
Can I add to that for a second?
Oh,
yeah.
I guess it was.
And I think it's funny that, you know, Donna's on here as well, because, you know, when we go back and I say, is it a final PDF? And then if I have to, you know, fix it all in Acrobat, and then Donna might come back, because I love my Donna, but if she's like, can you just add a period? And then I have to go back and do all the things that I did. And now that she can see, I think, what we're talking about when we say all the steps that you need to fix it, that when I say, is this the final? Is this the final? I mean, I know there's going to be changes on these documents. I think that's really standard. It happens. But I guess going back, it is great to have it fixed beginning, even though you're going to have these changes on the PDF. So, you know, final PDFs are nice when they say they're really final.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yes.
You know,
No,
that just shows that I am the thorn in Angela's side. Just saying. I acknowledge, I admit.
we
but-
appreciate all you do. We do.
It really is helpful to see this.
See, there's my cat. Okay. So,
So something funky happened here because it put all these extra sections, and it's interesting that it did
yeah, and
this.
I didn't get that with my Mac. So,
But I didn't get this the first time that I saved this over. Remember, I had to resave it over because there was a title issue, and I resaved it over, and now it's giving me all these extra sections. I mean, I can get rid of them, but I'm just curious as to why it did that.
what is that actual paragraph? Is that a blank tag too?
Which one?
The paragraph, the next one.
Down here?
Yeah, is that empty?
No.
It's not.
No, but what it's done is so I have my first figure of the panda, and then it should all continue as part of the same section, but it's put a section tag, and then it's my next panda, and then another section tag, and then my paragraph below the panda. So there's something funny that happened when it transferred, and I'm not sure why that it did that, because normally it doesn't give me all these extra sections. So
Sometimes it happens. And, back to Angela's point, this is why we don't want to have to continue to remediate a PDF over and over. It takes a lot of work. And now that you're kind of seeing these examples and these changes, it's another thing when you're working with your teams or your boss or someone else to work on a document and say, hey, okay, these are the steps we need to take. This is what it might end up doing. It's going to take a lot of time. We're doing the right thing. We're going to have to do it. But I've seen what it could do and how much time it takes. The other thing I wanted to make a note of, when you right click on something to change the tag or to mark it as an artifact, I want to say there's only 3 of us on here. I don't know if anyone from the state level is using a Mac. I know that Donna, Angela, and I both all have a Mac. We don't have the option to, in our menu. Now you have to do what here. I'm going to take over for a minute.
yeah. I
yeah.
was gonna switch it to a different one. Okay.
I'm just kind of going and you can right click on the actual item and oh great, this isn't the we don't have the option to mark something as an artifact right out of the gate. So
Change tag, yeah.
So change tag to artifact on a Mac.
What do you have to do on a Mac?
You have to actually go into the properties.
Or can you just do it in the reading order?
Sorry, yeah, that's what I meant. I might have to go into the reading order tool here.
Okay, do it in there.
And
select
I would have
it,
to
select it, and then
make it a background. So again, these are.
And it doesn't say artifact, right? On Mac, it just says background.
On mine, it only says background.
Okay, so that's important too for people who are Mac people to know that.
Yeah.
That's the same thing as artifact.
So in the reading tab, I can delete spaces. So Angela, do you mean delete them or do you mean mark them as artifact like we were just talking about?
So if I was doing the reading tab and I found that there was extra little spaces or something, I just do the control or right click and I delete the piece rather than artifact it. So you selected item struck, is it, I don't know, well mine's on a Mac, so mine's different, but I think it says delete from blah, blah, blah. And depending on what it is, if it's not necessary, it allows me to delete it and then it doesn't even show up anywhere.
It's not showing up as an error then when you run your accessibility checker?
No, not it's after I do the accessibility checker and say that I do the reading tab and say that it's in the right order and I'm going down and then it shows a blank, it could be a blank box. I'll just, click on it and I'm able to delete it from that structure, from that space. If it doesn't exist there, then I don't need it. If it's an artifact, there is a.
But when you run the accessibility checker again, is it showing up then as an error?
It'll give me the right reading.
I do, Angela. I'm not on Amy's computer. I'm actually on mine right now, and I see that you do have the option. And we can do. I'm not sharing my screen just because I think it's the 3 of us and we can do this offline. But I see that if I'm in the reading order and it says delete selected item structure, I still wouldn't do that. I would actually right click it and do tag as background.
Because otherwise you will get you will get an error.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah, and we just want to make sure that we're doing it correctly when it comes to accessibility.
Let me do a test one for you at some point, and I'll have you run through it and see if it's, I mean, I won't do it anymore, but I'm kind of curious to see it.
Oh, and I'm wrong. There is the option to change tag to artifact on a right click. So we have that. So that's good.
So as far as the tags, anybody have any questions or comments or anything that you want us to go over again? Because we kind of went through that quickly. But again, if we were to do, a second level training for, those of you who are interested, something we're talking about offering in the future, that's something we would get more into, go deeper with that.
Yeah, so if you can let us know in the chat if you would be interested in a secondary higher level PDF or a secondary Word. There's a lot more in Word to do things quicker, I guess, or to do the same things in Word. I wouldn't necessarily say there's more things to do to make it accessible. What you learned last week is it. But there is some other things we can do in Word and PDF as we're looking through these documents. The other thing I wanted to do is look at alternative text and how to do that within PDF. You might get a document that doesn't have tags correctly. So if I ran the accessibility checker, there is an alternative text check part here, right? So nested alternative text figures have alternative text. That might fail. If for some reason it does and you need to set it, if you right clicked on certain elements that show up as an error, you can hit fix, or my cat, or you can go over here and set alternative text. It'll look for the photos, and then it'll give you this little box where you can kind of go through one by one. So I'm just using the arrows, panda lying down, tree during sunset. You also have this option as decorative figure. So you might have a line, right? That's just a section break. That's a line. And so that doesn't add to your story. That doesn't add any meaning to things around it. You can mark that as a decorative text or a decorative figure, sorry.
Yeah, I like that they have that in there. They're in there now as an option.
Yeah, and Donna, you're right. You can mark that. I would mark it first as a decorative, and then I would mark it as an artifact. I would do both. Donna had asked, or you just got it, or
yeah, that's a good point. Good point.
Yeah. Yep, and I would actually do both. Again, the whole point is doing as much as you can for as many people. So while one screen reader just marking it, marking alternative text as putting alternative text and marking it as a decorative figure, their JAWS or another assistive technology might be smart enough to skip that. Or if we're using the Nvda, which is the free version for Windows PCs, that may or may not read it the same way. Or you're using the built-in recorder, the built-in voice thing that you heard earlier within PDF, that might read it differently. Yeah. Or a Mac voiceover might read it differently. So if you have all these tools and knowledge in your back pocket, do as much as you can. I'm just reading through the chat. And so as field staff, as BRS, I do not believe we have access to a PDF Pro. I would fight for that.
Yeah. And even in the reader, you can use the reading feature just to read something, but you can't, unfortunately, you can't change a lot of things. So somebody needs to have it, because if you're creating documents that need to be accessible, there needs to be somebody who can take things and make sure that before they're shared, emailed, or put on the website, that they are accessible.
Absolutely. And you now have all the, you have some resources, you have knowledge in your back pocket now. If you're working with consumers who need to access these documents, you should have the tools in order to make them accessible. At least one person on your team, like Amy was saying, because it is an expense. It's not free. But there's reasons to do it. And even in our own organization, not everybody here has Adobe Pro, right? So Amy and I have it, our marketing team has it, a few others around the organization have it, but not all of our employees have it. It would be great if we did, but it's an expense. But I think it's worth it to fight for it.
Yeah, especially, having gone through the training. I mean, it's something that you would know how to use and would be able to use it to make the documents accessible.
Are there any other questions? Amy, we do have time. Did you want to go through the OCR?
Yeah, we can definitely do that. Yeah. We can show, I can show within this document here, and then we can also, and hopefully I think this will work fine today. I'm going to be positive that it's going to work. So as Karen mentioned, the Nvda is
welcome to Nvda. Welcome
is a free screen reader. So I use this a lot to test to see how documents are.
Okay. Vertical 0 Nvda 1/ accessible.
So I have up beside the document, I have up the speech viewer. So the speech viewer, it's helpful so that whatever it is reading, it shows that particular text
Nvda
where I am within the document. So if I come in
1/4C: accessible
my document here and I want to go through my headers, if I
demo document heading level 2. No next heading at level 1.
So it's saying no next level at heading 1 because I'm actually right in front of the heading 1 heading, which is the top. So if I go to 2.
Headings heading level 2. Paragraph spacing heading level. Demo doc. Lists heading level 2. Page 2 simple tables heading level 2.
So as I'm hitting 2 each time I do that, it's going to the next heading level 2 item. If I type L on the keyboard, it's going to bring me to my list.
No next list.
It's not going to bring me to my list because I'm past
2/4C:\\. List with 4 items, page 1 apples.
So it's telling me list with 4 items, page 1 apples. So apples is my first item on the list. If I use my down arrow,
oranges.
It's going to go to my next item.
Lemons. Bananas.
So it's going through each of my items on that list. If I want to go to, say, the images that are on here.
Page 3 panda eating a cookie graphic.
So it's telling me about that. My panda eating a cookie.
Panda lying down graphic. Page 4 tree during sunset graphic.
That time it did it correctly. It was giving me a hard time before, but that time it did it correctly. So it went through.
Just one item that I don't know if I brought up on alternative text. There is no need to put image of.
VDA shows.
Because you
4/4 access list with 4 shows Nvda 3/4C accessible Word doc fix -Adobe 1/.
Hold on. Okay, go ahead.
No, what I was going to say is that you can see that it read the alternative text and then put the word graphic at the end. So he's on a roll. Or sometimes other screen readers might say image of and then the alternative text. So you do not need to put in your alternative text image of or graphic of,
right?
Because then it's duplicating what it's going to say.
it's gonna do it over and over again, and that gets to be obnoxious. So now if I just have this read the document, I'm starting at the top and I'm just having it just start reading right from where I am.
Headings are essential for the structure of the document and for ease of navigation using a screen reader. They are assigned using styles. Heading must be used in a hierarchical manner. Unlike in HTML, multiple heading 1 tick S can be used in a PDF. Heading level 2 paragraph spacing.
So you can see as it gets to a certain element, it's going to say heading level 2 paragraph spacing, and then it's going to continue to read. So Because this is an accessible document, it's going to read through and not give me a hard time. If I was to use the print PDF version of this document, it would be a lot more difficult to have this read and to navigate through the document. So that's just
Nvda once this prevent 1/ paragraph spacing x applicate x2 accessible x2 accessible word dash.
Read the table.
What's that?
Can you read the table?
Oh, the table.
Document
Sure.
1/ table with 3 rows and 3 columns. Row 1, column 1, page 2, class name. Column 2, professor. Column 3, day left paren, s right paren, of the week. Row 2, class name. Column 1, microbiology. Professor. Column 2, dr dot. Mark, day left paren, s right paren, of the week. Column 3, tr. Row 3, class name. Column 1, calculus.
So because I have a table header, when it's reading the items within that column, it's telling me what the header is. It's giving me that as an anchor. So I know it's class name, and then it's telling me calculus rather than just saying calculus. So it's giving.
It's so important to make sure that you're that you did that item tagging in Word. Just that simple checkbox allowed it to be accessible in a simple table, which I think is great.
Definitely. Any questions? Anybody have any questions on that?
Nope. Someone said that they shared the information with their employer to try to make things accessible for them and their students who are visually impaired and others. Just FYI, this is so great learning how to make PDFs for accessible and something I have equal access to. That's fantastic. Yeah, and again, if you need any more resources, let us know. We can certainly share some more about that. And the quick access guide is in that handout folder, the Google Drive. And I can always resend that link with the Google Drive. And when this video is all said and done and I get it up on YouTube with closed captions. So that's any questions about the speech assistive technology?
Screen reader?
Any other questions that you have?
2/4.
Can you go over the OCR document that you scanned, just as an example?
Yeah, so I can do that. I have a printed PDF and I have a scanned as well. So
X2 unknown.
I'm just going to start with this one. So this is the same document that we just did, and we did a save as a PDF. So this is the print to PDF version of that same document. So if I try to navigate in this,
2.
And I'm hitting 2 for heading 2 levels, it's just going to keep saying 2.
2.
If I try to go to table,
T.
It's just going to tell me
L.
what keys I'm hitting rather than actually navigating me through this document. So it is, my accessibility checker is over here on the left-hand side, and I'm seeing lots of issues. I have 5 issues in the document, page content 2 issues, alternative text 5 issues, tables 4 issues, list 2 issues, headings 1 issue.
Tags.
If I go to my tags, it's telling me there's no tags available because I totally, by doing print to PDF, I stripped out all those tags. So now when I try to use my screen reader with this document, it's just not going to work. And so if I don't have that document that's fully accessible, this is what's going to happen. And this is the frustration that somebody would experience in trying to use this document. If I go to one
Adobe PDF accessibility quick scan to PDF with OCR Microsoft Word X unknown.
So
unknown.
This is the scan to PDF with OCR. It still is going to need some work in order for this to work correctly. So if I go to tags, of course, even though I did the OCR, there are no tags available, so I would still have to tag it. So that's going to take, time to do that. So because there isn't tags, I can't navigate through this with my keyboard shortcuts. So it's for a screen reader, just doing the OCR is not going to be enough. If I'm using, say, some text to speech, I'm going to be okay. If I go through with Adobe, the Pro version, and use some of the features it has for helping to make the document accessible and for it figuring out the reading order based on the document itself or left to right, I can do that as well. I can also go in and have it do some auto tagging. And again, these are some things that we would do at kind of another level of this. But just to show you that these are some of the things that happen. I can show one other thing, and I'm going to just close out my screen reader here.
Exit Nvda. What? Oh.
I'm going to show similar documents, but using different tools. So if I have this original document that we did, and I have that print to PDF, and I'm trying to use, someone's sharing this in Google, and I'm trying to use a tool like Read and Write to read this, the document looks great, but when I go to read this, it's not gonna read it correctly, because again, the print to PDF, it can be a little funny.
UREOFTHE document NDFORESEOFNFEIGATIONU.
So you can see that it's just kind of, it's picking up some of the words, but some of the words it's just saying all kinds of crazy stuff. And then if I do a scan to a PDF with no OCR, which is what I see happen a lot with things that are scanned, it's telling me we can't find any text in this document. It may not have been scanned using OCR. So what I like about this is it's telling you right up front that this is this is the case. It's not going to work because it wasn't scanned using OCR. So it can't even read it. This program does have some features that I can use to read it. So I can use my screenshot reader, and I believe I showed this last time, to just lasso a certain block of text, and it will read that text to me. If I've done the same thing, but I've done that same PDF and I've scanned it with OCR, my tools are going to look different, and it actually will read. However, even though it is reading, I'm still going to have issues with reading order, or it trying to read things that are maybe part of a graphic.
Microsoft Word Accessibility Quick Reference. Overview 8 ways to create a more.
This part is okay. I think it's when it gets down a little further. It's going to, let me see, come down here to the add a document title.
Add a document.
Keep reading.
Microsoft Word Accessibility.
Okay, hold on. Let me see if I have it just, it's supposed to do continuous reading, and sometimes it doesn't.
Screenshots and instructions are based on Microsoft Word 2013. Add a document title info. File tab, title field.
So you can, what it's doing is it's just any of the text that it's recognized with the OCR as text, it's going to read that. I would actually have to go in and make sure I told it, you know, this is part of the text that I want you to read. This text is part of a graphic. So it gets it a little bit further, but it's still not where it needs to be.
Right, and it's just a lot of work to have to do, and I think that these are great examples to be able to hear what some of these technologies are doing, whether you're using them or you're using something else. I always found it extremely fascinating to see and to hear what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not to me, I wouldn't read it that way, but this assistive technology is going to try its best with what it's been given. So let's try to make it easier.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So those are just some examples of ways that you know, you can test things out. So Read and Write, they do have, there is, I think, a 30-day full version. And then after the 30 days, what's nice with Read and Write is you still have access to the text-to-speech. So it's a tool that you can have, and you can try whether you use it. Right now I'm using it within Google Chrome, but they do have a version that downloads onto the computer as well that you could use to try out and see how it works with documents. And Nvda as a screen reader is free, so it's something that people can try to test out their documents.
So we have about 6 minutes left. I know that we went through a lot, so if you have any questions, feel free to unmute. Feel free to put in the chat if you have questions that come up
Yeah.
later. Feel free
And,
to email us.
We could, let me bring it up. The PowerPoint,
Oh.
we can, the PDF practice, just,
There is also a survey that we would really like you guys to fill out.
let me just, let me go to the, let's see, from the PDF practice that people could do. So if you take a Word document, either the one that we gave before or one that you are working on, and just save it as a PDF, and then go through those steps that we went through. You do have that handout now that's in Google Drive about PDFs. Some of the things on there, you know, are beyond what we talked about, but you can go through the accessibility checker, see what kind of errors you get, check out the reading order and the tags. And then, as Karen said before, you know, see if there's a way that you can either, you know, get access to Pro for yourself, or if somebody else has it, you know, try it out using their, of course, now that's not a great time to be doing that, but in the future, to be able to, you know, use somebody else's computer to try it out.
I just clicked through, but oh, well, there's a resource. Sorry, I didn't mean to
No, it's okay.
click something, but these are some other. Oh, thanks you for joining. If you need to leave, thank you so much. If you have any questions, just, you know,
Thank you.
email. These are some other tools that we have linked. I can certainly put these links in a document as well inside the handouts. And then the very last thing, I'm going to type it in the chat if you want to, or if and I will also send it out if I can spell.
An email.
In an email. We really need this data, if you don't mind filling this out in order to get back to Arlene, which is awesome. So please fill out that survey. If there's any questions, concerns, comments, let us know. And also, we'd really like to know if you would like we have PowerPoint accessibility as well. That's another training that we do. If you want secondary Word, if you want second level Adobe PDF, please let us know so we can make arrangements to do so. And we just wanted to thank you again for joining us. And hopefully this was worth your time. We really appreciate you guys being here. And that's all.
Yeah, thank you everybody very much.
All right. Thank you guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
So Amy, do you want to stop sharing? And
Yep.
and then I'm going to